So we started the bottom layers. Now let's talk about kind of moving up to the top layers. Obviously, all this is not 100% finished, but for the sake of time, let's just go through how you would do next steps. So right here, I put a little more of the dark value. And if you notice the difference between this and this, do you see how perfect these edges are right here? That doesn't look like it matches with everything else. If we look at our original, it's definitely in that shape, but do you see how there's unevenness, and then there's going to be a lighter area. There's a little bit of that yellow that actually should be poking through. See how this is not solid dark, so that's what we got to be aware of. So you can see how right here, you can see the dark, same thing here. You can see the dark, but it is definitely not solid. Any of these spots. Over here, back here. So just another reminder that if you do this where you cover the whole thing up and you make the edges a little too precise and perfect, it doesn't actually match up with the rest of the style. So it's dry. We're just going to work with it now, and we need to rough up the edges and make it match up. So at this point, previously, I used bigger brushes to do a lot of this, and flat brushes. So one thing as you're doing a copy of a Monet or a Van Gogh or a Cezanne or one of the art impressionists or post-impressionists, you got to remember that our canvases are not as big as the originals. So even this area over here, it seems really simple, but there's a lot of little brushwork. Back here, see all these little details. Look back here, there's a lot of these little brushwork, smaller brushwork. So what does that mean for us? That means we need to start using a smaller brush. We're going to start getting a little bit more specific. Remember, as you're trying to make smaller lines and control it, you do want to try to use the tip. So if you push it down, it's going to make a thicker line. If you hold it with a little less pressure and you're just using the tip of it, you're going to be able to get a smaller, more direct line. So once again, there would be lots more layers of color that I would be doing, but to just show you a little bit of that smaller kind of brushwork that we're talking about, if we look at our original, there's a lot of this darker value layered in here. So I need to switch to, like we said, a smaller brush, a smaller brush stroke. So I have a few different dark colors mixed up. I mixed the green with a little bit of black and blue. So I can start layering on a little bit of this. I'm going to mix it in with this because I don't want that dark green to stay just one color of green. So hopefully you're getting the sense of all of the layers that are going to start happening here. Because this looks good, but still not enough. There's many layers coming. If you have a good round brush, there might be areas that you have a thicker brush stroke, so then you push down a little bit, get a thicker line. Where I need lighter, thinner lines, I don't push down hard at all, and I just use a really light pressure, so that's just barely kind of kissing the canvas. So I used a little bit of green and a little bit of black together. So feel free to use the black, but just make sure that you remember how much of an impact black has. I'm doing that kind of really dark color now. It's not straight black, but it's pretty dark because I'm going to do some of the bluish color over it. As we talk about brush control, if I don't have a lot of paint, I can get those light marks, but because there's not much paint, I actually have to push down a little bit, so it is harder to get brush control. You almost need to load up the tip of your brush a little differently, so you can use a light pressure and kind of squiggle that around without having to push down hard. You can also get this flat brush kind of squeezed real flat, dip it in your paint to get a little bit of paint right here, and then you can drag that across to get some of those really smaller controlled lines too. So now I'm using the layers underneath so you can see the yellow still poking through, so it's not solid blue. Because we have some not high quality brushes, those really thick brushes I used for the background, you may have these spots where a hair actually came off. So after it's dry, the easiest thing is just wait till it's dry and then peel it off. It may leave a little white mark, so it's best to do that before you get too far into your painting. I have a couple more that I should take care of before I get too far into the process. Last things, and then we're going to leave you guys to finish this. Once again, there's many layers. If I look at my original compared to what I have right now, I have a good start with that light and dark, but look on the bridge itself. There's that kind of teal. There's like a yellowy, there's almost like a orangey right there. There's, and you know, a little bit more yellow. So I still have a long ways to go. And then underneath the bridge, there's a little bit of lighter area, and then I have this pink and orange that I would need to add back in. From here, you should be able to see how now I would let this dry, and then I could come back in with a little bit of the brighter colors, the colors that I feel are the most on top and close to me. As we think of the whole project, you put down your base layer, like I primed the whole thing in blue. I lay down these yellows that are kind of my underneath colors, and then I did a little bit of this base color. Notice that there's no area where there's just one solid color. Even in the sky, there's that kind of bluish and then purpley, maroonish kind of color. In the water, there's a mix, and everything, the buildings. You're working on matching colors as best you can. You aren't going to be able to make some of the vibrant fuchsias and those sorts of things, but even just realize that I got a pretty decent teal by mixing the blue with the white first and then adding in this bright green, and that actually brightened it up. If I just did blue and green, it was too dark, but once I added a touch of white, then I was on the right track. So keep experimenting with your color, and then your top layer is going to be that really small areas of color. So your top layer are things like these marks, where I see that kind of orangey specific. What are my top marks over here? Even, you know, that green, those slashes of kind of a purple, that would be my top marks. These orange. So for acrylic, think back, midground, and then top layers. Whatever you see on the top and smallest detail, those are what you do last. Okay, go to it.